This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Hi, hello, welcome into the Paul Finebaum Show. No, it is not Paul Finebaum, as you can tell by the hair and the energy and all whatnot. It is Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, the mouth of the South. You can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. We got a fun show. Because, anytime that I get an opportunity to come in and hang out with the Finebombers, right, I get all excited because I'm looking at the call lines right now. They are already full. Well done. And we're going to have a little Marcus Spears in action. He's going to be joining me in studio a little bit later. But let's go ahead and start right into it because there's a ton of stuff to get into. The headlines: Alabama announces a home-and-home series with Notre Dame. That's right. It's a shame Mark Kubiak is not here because he's got to be so disappointed in the fact that he didn't get a chance to talk about this. Now, when are they going to be playing? That's a great question. I think hopefully we'll all be alive at that point. 2028, the game will be played in front of Touchdown Jesus and in front of the crowd in South Bend. In 2029, it'll be, well, in front of the football Jesuses, that is Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, and those statues in Tuscaloosa. Will Nick Saban be there in 2028, 29? I think we'll have some fun with some SEC headlines from 10 years from now. Other news coming around? How about this? World's greatest 50 leaders. Well, Forbes and Fortune magazine have come out and put their top 50 of the world's greatest leaders. Mr. T-Town himself, Nick Saban, has come in at number 12 on the list. Only coach in the top 50. By the way, he was ahead of Auburn grad Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. Serena Williams coming at 15. He was even in front of Oprah, coming in at 27. We'll have some fun with that as Nick Saban went out there as number 12 on the greatest leaders. Talk about a leader, that's the man in a Rocky Top. Not a bad deal. 4-year deal for Philip Fulmer as the Volunteers sign him to a long-term deal worth $1 million a year after the time you get your incentives and whatnot. One of the cool things about this is one of the bonuses that Philip Fulmer is going to get, 83% graduation rate between student athletes. As long as those guys hit that and he's graduating players, he gets a little bit of a bonus. So it's trying to put a little bit of the student and student athlete for Philip Fulmer, and I don't think there's a doubt he's brought some stability, what was a crazy couple of, months in that coaching search. Dan Mullen is a brand new coach down in Gainesville, and he's going to have to deal with this. C.C. Jefferson, expected to be out until fall camp, suffered an injury to his shoulder in the spring game. Originally, I believe that Dan Mullen and everybody in Gainesville and the training staff thought it was just kind of a stinger, but come to find out it's going to require surgery. Now, he will be back for fall camp, and there's no doubt that C.C. plays a major role in this Gators defense. 13.5 tackles for loss last year, 4.5 sacks. So it's going to be on Jabari Zuniga and a bunch of different other players to kind of get ready in the middle of fall camp. But important for the Gators, he will be back and should be 100% by the time the Gators take on Charleston Southern to open up the season. Last couple of days, I was down in Baton Rouge hanging out with Coach O, and so what to watch for at LSU's last practice day of the spring season. Fighting Tigers will have their spring game coming up, and it was kind of intriguing when I was down in Baton Rouge. This has a different feel. I think when the FPI, the Football Power Index, came out not too long ago, it showed, I think, LSU sitting at like 6.7 wins, and Vegas has the over and under at 7. So anytime you see that with LSU football teams, you're thinking, oh my goodness, the sky must be falling. I can tell you, they kind of look at those headlines and they're kind of laughing down in Baton Rouge because over the last couple of days when I was down there, this is a different-looking LSU squad than I have seen really in the last 2 years. And more importantly, where it came down to is the position groups of the offensive line and defensive line. Last couple of years, I mean, listen, I love Christian Locouture. I love a bunch of the different players. They showed a lot of heart, and they had to because, frankly, they didn't have enough dudes up front. And I can remember being in Athens about a week ago with Kirby Smart, and he finished practices by saying, we got to run the ball, and we got to stop the run. If we can do those two things, we're going to be competitive in the SEC. Guess what? They played for a national championship. They were one play away, 2nd and 26, from winning a national title in his second year. That's what they're trying to get back done at LSU for Ed Ogeron. He's recruiting well at that position, and it may be a little bit of an addition by subtraction when you look at his coaching staff this year. Everybody talked about the ballyhooed hire of Matt Canada. ultimately, what I came out is that Ed Orgeron is a whole lot more comfortable with the crew that he has surrounding him coming into 2018 than he was there in that situation in 2017. We got a lot of guests coming up on the Paul Finebaum Show today. Let's go ahead and show you what's on tap. The Bear. If you come at the Bear, you best not miss, just like Omar at the Wire. We had some people that were kind of running their mouth and chomping their gums saying that the SEC wasn't that dominant when it came to the NFL draft. Yeah, the Bear put them in their spot. Chris Fallica is going to join us from College Game Day at 3:30. Marcus Spears, a.k.a. the Big Swagu, my partner on our morning show over there on SiriusXM, he's going to join me for a full hour at the 5 o'clock Eastern hour. So that's coming up in about 2 hours. Dan Mullen will stop by as well. We'll talk about what the Gators are going to bring kind of going forward in this upcoming season. And Will Muschamp's squad, hoping to go ahead and make a run at the SEC East. Josh Kendall from the state is going to hang tight with us for a little bit in the last hour. 855-242-PAUL is the phone number. You can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. But let's go ahead and start Deep Gap, North Carolina. Hugh, thanks for joining Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. What's up?
We got a guest star today.
Oh, that's right. What's going on, my man?
I've been listening to a lot of the fan base rage on about how great their teams are going to be. Couple of things are pretty clear to me. Here's what I think I know. Alabama is the only team in the Southeastern Conference that has unquestioned depth, high-quality depth in 2s and 3s at every position. And given that fact, all the rest of the teams are going to kind of be up for grabs in how long their A-line best players and 1 or 2 subs they have can make it. And that includes Georgia. You don't graduate and send to the NFL 5-year seniors and replace them with 20-star freshmen in the trenches. It takes a while to develop that, and the 2 running backs that are going to be certainly drafted. Georgia is clearly the favorite team to do well in the East, but it's not a foregone conclusion. The other thing I think I know is, at least I believe it's a fact, is that a first-year coach, regardless of how profound their previous experience was, it takes a year or two to kind of get their personnel settled into what they want to do and get the exact people they need to implement it. And when you consider we have 5 teams with new coaching staffs, Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State are all teams that the team I like, Kentucky, will play. While you know, when you look at that schedule, you say, well, Kentucky's going to lose to Mississippi State and Texas A&M and Georgia, even though Mississippi State and Georgia both need to go to Lexington. And even though Kentucky will have the best offensive line and running backs and the best running game they've had since 1976, and they had one runner that was the top runner in the Southeastern Conference, had over 1,300 yards. But still, you have to know that based on what's coming down, Mississippi State and Georgia are supposed to be big winners. And to hear everybody talk on this show, South Carolina is going to be the only challenger Georgia has. I need to remind everybody, South Carolina's lost to Kentucky the last 3 years in a row. So we don't know who the hell's going to do what, other than the fact Alabama can have 5 linebackers go down with injury and still win a national championship. That is the bonus for being the top recruiting team for 10 years in a row. Nobody else in the Southeastern Conference is anywhere close to that kind of depth, and I defy anybody to come up with sound reason that will tell me how any of this is going to sort out. There's a hell of a lot more questions than there are knowledge-based facts.
Hey, Hugh, you nailed it. You literally, your soliloquy here to start the show is spot on, because the only thing we do know right now, in sitting here on April 18th or 19th, whatever day it is the fact that we don't know a whole heck of a lot. Now, I think I know, and I will challenge you to a certain extent. I was just down in Athens, and when you talk about no one's going to have the depth, I do agree with you. There's no way that the Georgia Bulldogs can lose what they did. And Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, Roquan Smith, Lorenzo Carter. You lose those kind of cats, yeah, you're going to take a little bit of a hit. But what they lose in experience, I'll say that they'll gain in overall talent. I mean, there are guys that I sat there on the sidelines in the SEC Spring Tour and saw that they may not be playing right now, but what I saw in Athens is the exact same thing that I kind of felt with Alabama's football program around 2010, that this pipeline has only started, and that Georgia and the Bulldogs down there, they are building an absolute monster.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We head down to Gainesville. Matt, what's going on?
I think we need to give you a show, Peter, your own show.
I'm all ears, man. We need to hit up people at the SEC Network.
There's no bias. That Hugh guy, I mean, I don't know what he was talking about. I mean, Georgia could beat Kentucky with their third string. I mean, did he check the score last year? It was 42-13. Did he know? And, yeah, we lose a lot of talent, but does he know that we've had, like, the number one recruiting class last year? Yes, better than Alabama. Better than Alabama. Alabama was number 6 in recruiting. And where's Paul today? Where's he at?
Paul is I think he's a hand model European, so I don't know if he's in Iceland or Finland getting some work done. Yeah. He is in Athens. That's right. That's correct.
And Paul, if you're listening to the show, you need to go to the Last Resort restaurant.
Yep. And
get you a fried green tomato sandwich. One of the best sandwiches in Athens. Shout out. But it's Georgia and Alabama. They're the top. They are the top. I don't see South Carolina having enough offensive weapons. I mean, I think Muschamp's done great, but people are trying to present something, and I think it's Georgia and Alabama and Auburn. I think it's theirs to lose because we have such not bad non-conference schedules. That it's,
Matt, I will tell you this real quick. I believe with you, what you said in those three teams as far as Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia. And now I do believe
people forget Auburn too. People forget Auburn.
I get it. And I wouldn't sleep here real quick, Matt. I would not sleep on Mississippi State too. I mean, I was down in Starkville. This is as good. This team right now is better than the team that they had top to bottom as far as starters and depth than the team that was the number one team in the country for 5 weeks when they had Dak Prescott.
I just think anytime you have a new coach, it takes 2 years to implement a system. Yes, McElwain won the East in his first year, but he's now in Montana. So very rarely, Nick Saban didn't do it. Kirby Smart didn't do it. Very rarely does a first-year coach have that big an impact. I think people are jumping the gun on Mullen. I think people are definitely – I don't think Pruitt's going to be as good as people near think he is. I just think, I don't think he'll be there that long. I think Mullen will do fine, but you've got to win. Florida's got high expectations, just like Alabama, just like Georgia, and not everybody can win. And same way with LSU. That's probably the toughest game Georgia has is LSU at LSU. We've got now
remember I was going to say that game coming up. I will say this: week 2, that game's going to be down in Columbia. South Carolina is going to be hosting a Georgia team.
It's not near as, and Columbia's a hard place to play, and I give them respect. But it's not like, and I've been to both those places. But LSU, there's a reason they were the only school to ever record an earthquake during a football game? There's a reason.
It was 1986. It was Tommy Hodson over to Eddie Fuller, the earthquake game. For those of you
that I pray that we get the 3:30 CBS game and not the night game because we don't. I don't care. That place is crazy. And South Carolina's not. I'm just telling you, South Carolina's like going to Georgia Tech compared to LSU. LSU's a different world. But like I said, Peter, you need your own show. You don't wear Alabama underwear like Mr. Finebaum, but have a good day and go Dogs.
Matt, we appreciate the phone call. I will say if I'm 10% of the host that Paul Finebaum is, I'll be in good shape for the rest of my life. I will say this about the team down in Athens. I think the most overblown storyline and throughout college football, when you have all these people that don't know what they're talking about and they get into this conference, they're like, oh, what's going to happen with Justin Fields and Jake Fromm? Justin Fields looks like Cam Newton if you took off 2 inches of him, right? This kid is going to be fantastic athlete. He's going to be an incredible kid to watch. I'll tell you this. There is no doubt in my mind. There is no quarterback controversy. This is Jake Fromm's team. Jake Fromm will be the starter, and Jake Fromm will lead this Georgia Bulldogs team for 2018. The only way I see Justin Fields taking the field this upcoming season is in a little mop-up work, and guess what? I think he's okay with that. I saw a young man that's extremely talented, but a young man that also wants to learn properly. And they lost so much leadership at Georgia between Roquan Smith, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. When I was down in Athens, that whole team responds to Jake Fromm. He went toe-to-toe with Jacob Eason, who was a 5-star, all-world guy. Nobody's going to beat him. This is NFL-type caliber. He didn't care. He said, great, that's fine. Bring on the competition. He's going to like competing against Justin Fields, and it's going to make him better. But there is no quarterback controversy in Athens whatsoever. It is Jake Fromm's team, and that's good for the Georgia Bulldogs.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
One of the guys that's on the hotline is the man, the myth, the legend. They call him the Bear, and you don't go at him because he will bring back truth and knowledge. Chris Fallica, one of my favorite people in all of the world. Like it's my mom, like my dad, my daughter, my wife, and then Chris Fallica. You're number 5. You're on my top 5 MySpace friends list, Chris.
I appreciate that. I don't quite make Mount Rushmore, but I'm in the top 5. That's good enough for me.
That's all you need to know. Like, the bad part about it is if I ever have to move, you're my 5th call as well too. So I'm sorry, you're probably gonna have to help me move one of these days. Chris Fallica joining us, College Game Day. Let's start with this. This is the most important thing before we get into the NFL draft numbers and the dominance of this conference. Who would be in the Big Eats Conference? So for those who don't know and listening to us on radio, John Hayes, in his stupor this morning, I guess got up too early and meant to type Big East Conference, but he accidentally typed Big Eats Conference. So who are your teams in the Big Eats Conference?
Well, I guess we'll have to go with the restaurants that I guess kind of along the faster food and that most people would know instead of specific regions. But I would guess we'd have to go maybe with Chick-fil-A, Shake Shack, Chipotle, and Five Guys maybe.
Okay, those would be
Am I missing something?
Well,
there might be one seat.
Those would be the sponsors. Those would be the bowl tie-ins for the Big Eats Conference. But I'm talking about what schools like themselves would say, hey, we're pulling out of our original conference because we're going. Because I think Arkansas is on that list. I think Wisconsin would be on that list.
Absolutely.
Probably
those two would be good.
None of the Pac-12 schools because they're just kind of weak and kind of feeble. They're eating like rabbit lettuce and stuff like that. So I don't think we get a Pac-12 school in the Big Eats Conference. What school in the South am I missing?
Let's see. Arkansas is a really good candidate. What else do we have there in? Just trying to think, maybe in Memphis, some good Memphis barbecue.
Okay, I like where your head's at. We can do that. Chris, I enjoy your work. You do fantastic stuff when it comes to kind of the odds makers and whatnot, but then the research you do on College Game Day is fantastic. And you were bringing up some numbers. Somebody, I won't give him the credit that he wants to get because that's why he tweeted it. But there was a tweet that was out that was talking about since 2013, the SEC has had 50 first-round draft picks, 22 more than any other conference. First-round picks since 2013, it's not even close. SEC has dominated. When you go back and look at it, well, yes, there's the man who won't be mentioned. He's saying SEC, more teams equal more players equal more draft picks, Captain Obvious. And Fallica, you said, well, I thought 5 years was a nice round number. If we go 10 years, SEC has had 90 first-round draft picks, ACC 50, 40 more first-round draft picks. Do we expect to see that number just continue to grind and rise up, Fallica, when you look at the NFL draft coming up?
I think it will because, I mean, if you look at this year's projection, you're going to have, at least four Alabama players going in the first round. Taven Bryan's a guy who I think a lot of people are projecting in the first round. Hayden Hurst, a tight end from South Carolina. I mean, I think you're looking at least another 6, potentially 7 as well. I mean, you're going to get, I forgot about Roquan Smith, maybe Sony Michel or Nick Chubb. I'd say 7 or 8 is probably a more likely outcome. The other amazing thing when I went back and looked is well over picks over the last couple of days because I wanted to make sure. All right, what am I missing here? I don't want to. Everyone thinks like you have an agenda, or everyone at ESPN is out to make the SEC out to be the greatest conference ever, and there's no room for debate. So am I missing something? So I went back and looked at over the last 2 years alone, the day 1 and 2 players of the premium picks, the top 3 rounds. 205 players selected in the first 3 rounds over the last 2 years. 94 of the 205, which is 46%, nearly half, play their college football in either 2 conferences. The SEC, which had 52, and the Big Ten, which had 42. The next closest is the Pac-12 at 26. So it goes to show you that the NFL scouts, at least, are really focusing on the SEC and the Big Ten in terms of what they deem to be elite draft picks.
Do you see, and there's always the conversation we have about what is the best conference in college football, right? Is it the amount of title contenders you have, or is it the depth of the conference? Where do you, in when you're talking to Herbie, when you're talking to all the guys and Reese, what is that conversation? What is the best conference? Is it contenders, or is it the absolute depth from 1 to 10 or 1 to 14?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. I mean, I don't want to be like the Big Ten where you have 4 or 5 really good teams at the top, and then the bottom level teams like Illinois are just terrible. I think you need a little bit of depth, and like we saw last year, you had Kentucky, who was kind of a middling or a lower half of the SEC. They went to a bowl game as a huge underdog against Northwestern and competed and nearly won that game. So I kind of like having I like having a really, really good core at the top 3 teams or 2 teams or somewhere in that I consider national championship contenders, but at the same time I want to know that on any given, there aren't any gimmies in the conference play at all. So I think it's a little cross of both there.
You can follow him on Twitter, Chris Fallica. He is the Bear from College Game Day. Over and unders got everybody all hot and bothered here on this show. I'm Paul Finebaum. And literally, when I walked in today, Chris, to host for Paul, there were already 6 people on hold, and several of them said they want to talk about the over and unders, either the football power index or what Vegas thinks these teams are going to do. Was there any of them that you saw that you circled going, I did not see that number coming?
Well, I am going to have full disclosure here. I have not seen any of them. So if we want to run through a couple, we could play give them a win dog if you'd like for a bit, and maybe try and project some of these.
All right, so let's go. Alabama and Georgia were sitting at 10.5. I don't think there was a total shock, but were you more shocked at Alabama being at 10.5 or Georgia?
No, I'd say Alabama. Actually, I should take that back. I think more shocked at Georgia, just because if you look at Alabama's schedule, where are the losses? I mean, they're really, probably 2 losable games maybe on there. The home game against Auburn at the end of the year, but I don't know if Auburn's going to go to Tuscaloosa and win last game of the year. LSU, who knows who they're going to be. They get A&M at home earlier in the year. They're going to be a huge favorite over Louisville. I mean, I just don't see any more than 2 potentially losable games, and odds are they're not going to lose 2. I think Georgia would be the bigger shock, just because of you do lose a lot of guys. You've had some tricky road games at South Carolina, road game at LSU. Florida will be better with Dan Mullen this year. The home game against Auburn, and of course, Auburn did beat them in the regular season last year. So, of those 2, if you're looking to go under under the 10.5 with one of those 2 teams, I think Georgia would probably be the team that I would. If I had to go under on one of them, it would be Georgia.
How about when you sit there and hear that LSU predicted to go at 7.5? 7 and a hook is the number for the over and under for wins. Fallica, where are you rolling?
I would lean under right now. That game against Miami to start the season is a huge swing game. I mean, that's going to be a toss-up game, but you would think that they're not going to win at Auburn. You would think that they're probably not going to win at Florida. They're not going to beat Alabama. And even though the game's in Baton Rouge, and they probably won't beat Georgia. Again, toss-up game, home game, they could win, but I think Georgia's a more talented team, and that's 5 games right there. That doesn't even include Mississippi State, who has given them problems in recent years, and then the road game at A&M. And you would think that A&M will be better this year with Jimbo Fisher at the end of the season. So I would be a pretty strong under on LSU.
We know that Arkansas with Chad Morris and even Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt, I think that they're inheriting programs that are kind of on a rebuild. As far as for A&M, Florida, and Mississippi State, they get brand new head coaches, but they aren't in a situation where the sky is falling, that there's something left in the cupboard. Which one of these teams will be the first to win 10 games? Will it be A&M with Jimbo Fisher? Will it be Dan Mullen and Florida Gators? Or will it be Joe Moorhead in Mississippi State?
I'll go with Florida just because they've had players there. I mean, the talent that has been there, and they're going to continue to get talent, and Mullen's been a successful coordinator there. And the fact that you're in the SEC East, and really it's Georgia right now who is your main competition there. Not to say that South Carolina or Tennessee won't eventually get it going, but Florida's non-conference schedules, typically outside of the Florida State game, they really don't have much in the non-conference. So I would think just by that logic alone, Florida would be the most likely to get to 10 first.
Hey, what do you do in the off season? I mean, are you a fisherman? Do you just get into the library and start studying the stats? What does the bear do? Do you just go in the cave and hibernate or what?
Oh, well, my off-season this year consisted of working in the SEC basketball tournament and the Final Four with Dick Vitale, which was an absolute blast. That went right into the Masters at Augusta, and now I'm getting ready for the NFL draft, and I'll be going to Dallas next week for the draft. So that's my real slow, relaxing, lazy off-season. I know, cry me a river, you get to go to the Final Four, and you get to go to the Masters, and you get to go to the NFL draft, right? I'd much rather have it that way than the other way where I had nothing going on.
I was going to say, I thought Jim Nantz lived a life. The bear lives a life. And if you need an assistant to the assistant for Chris Fallica, you call me, and I will carry your lemonade and pimento cheese sandwiches at the Masters next year. He's Chris Fallica. You can follow him on Twitter there. Bear, hey, we appreciate it, man. Continued success, and you're killing it, all right?
Of course, absolutely. Appreciate it. Talk to you again soon.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
It's time for this. Hi, man. Hello. How are you, sir?
Peter Burns. Good afternoon.
How you doing, man? We're putting up some of these tweets a little bit. We're going to go back to those in a little bit. But how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm always doing well. I'm alive. I'm kicking, and guess what? I'm gonna be alive tomorrow. I'm gonna kick some more. And guess what I'm gonna do next week? I'm gonna still be alive, and I'm gonna kick some more. Now you had this guy that called in first. I guess he must have been on hold since yesterday afternoon, talking about Alabama's so deep. They real deep. And they real blue, and they real big 5 stars. And ain't nobody got nobody like them. Nobody like them. You know what? They got one quarterback with them faraway eyes the Rolling Stones sang about after the Auburn Tigers punched him in the mouth and whipped that ass in Jordan Hare. And then they got this old fragile finger fella. He ain't got no fingers. He's fragile, I'm telling you. He's just as crisp as a piece of lettuce. Overcooked bacon. Snap, snap, snap. And they've been punched in the mouth. The University of Alabama's been exposed, but ain't nobody got nobody like them. They willy tough. They will tough. How tough are they? They will tough. No, they're not. You go up there and you just kick their ass. There's just 11 of them on the field. And Auburn's 11 was better than their 11. They were exposed. Auburn is the biggest threat to the University of Alabama year in and year out. And you know what? I bet you won't get one of them political phone calls from Jim from Tuscaloosa or looking out his window in his backyard. Because you know why? He ain't got no backyard. But he's got a window. Because he's going to call in and quote me, probably quote Squirrel a time or two. And what's this big? This is not breaking news. Alabama's played Notre Dame in, 10 years? Mm-hmm. Nick Saban loves a team in transition, and his schedule is taking a butt kicking right now because Louisville's not so good. You know, they're not near as tough as Alabama. Not near as tough because Alabama's real tough. Willie, they say so damn tough. Bugs Bunny don't even want them on his show. But see, he loves a team in transition. Now, Nick Saban is supposed to be the man of college football. He could get any game he wanted right now. But the guy's a little bitty fella, and guess what? He's tired, too. He's a real coward. Peter Burns, you have a great day.
You indeed, man. I don't even know. I don't even know if I respond to that. 855-242-PAUL. I will tell you this. I don't think that he's struggling by any means to get anybody to play him. But the question is what will happen over there in 2028? Some of the tweets you guys have brought in, let's bring a couple of those in. Paul Finebaum, we tweeted earlier, Alabama and Notre Dame are scheduled to play a home-and-home in 2028, 2029. 10 years from now, what do you expect the headlines to be leading into that matchup? A couple of tweets, says AJ, said, can the once dominant Tide upset the resurgent Irish? Listen, if Nick Saban's there, that ain't going to happen. Catholics versus Crimson. I'm looking forward to that headline down the road as well. And more of the tweets are coming in. You can hit us up over at Finebaum or myself at Peter Burns ESPN. Let's take more of these phone calls. Let's go to Detroit, Michigan. Troy, what's up?
Nothing. How you guys doing down in the South?
Hey, you know what? The weather has finally turned. For a while there, we had Detroit weather, man. I feel for you in the weather you had to put up with most of the year, my man.
Oh, man. It's beautiful today. It's sunny and 55, so that's a start. But, hey, man, I understand. I'm a Michigan man, and I know, believe me, I'm one of Jim Harbaugh's biggest critics. What are your guys' thoughts about Jim Harbaugh down in the South? The program as a whole, we were good at one time, and we struggled like the last 10, 12 years. And he's 0-3 versus Urban. He's 1-2 versus D'Antonio. And, they opened up with Notre Dame. They got at Notre Dame, at Ohio State, at Michigan State, at Northwestern, another 10-win team. They play home games this year against Nebraska and Scott Frost and Penn State and Wisconsin. We got one of the toughest schedules in the country. When do you guys think this is going to turn around? Because, I blast Jim Harbaugh on Sports Talk Radio up here. And to me, as much money he's getting paid and all the hype that came with them and climbing trees and coaching first base for the Tigers in spring training and having a sleepover, to me, it's just tiresome. And I just want to get your guys' thoughts on Jim and the program and what do you guys expect from us this year down there? Because we're not on Alabama's level. Hell, we're ain't even on South Carolina's level right now, and I'll be honest with you, man. But I just want to get your guys' thoughts.
Troy, in Detroit, I've made no bones about my feelings of Jim Harbaugh on this program. I've said it many times that over the last couple of years, I think he's the Kim Kardashian of college football. And anytime I see a coach chasing headlines as opposed to putting a product on the field, I think it's a joke. And I think that's where Jim Harbaugh is right now. And I think when it comes down to it, if you ask me, we're talking about these predictions of what happens in the future of 2028. Forget 2028. I think with the way that this schedule sets up, the fact that he hasn't really been able to beat Ohio State, he has struggled against the team in East Lansing with the Spartans. I would not be surprised right now when you're talking 2019, you're talking about Jim Harbaugh and what NFL team that he's going to be coaching down in Ann Arbor. And guess what? That may not be a bad thing. He made Michigan football relevant again, but guess what? So did Butch Jones. And how did that work out for him? You chase headlines. You fall too close to the sun, you're going to get burned. And that's the situation with Jim Harbaugh. Most overrated coach, I believe, in college football.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
What up? I promised you Marcus Spears for hour number 3 of the Paul Finebaum Show, and I'm sorry I did not deliver. I'm now here with the artist formerly known as Skinny Marcus Spears. My man, what is happening
What's
here
up,
in studio?
Brother? I feel like I've been talking to you all day. So.
I know. Well, we have. We do the morning show over the new SEC Sirius XM channel, 374, hashtag branding. But my man, so what people don't know, we do the morning show together, but I do it out of my house, you do it out of yours.
So we don't see each other.
I don't get a chance to see you, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
Right.
I can only handle so much, Peter Burns.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sundays we do our show here for ESPN,
right.
which is great to see you that one for 2 hours on Sunday.
That's all I need to see you.
That's it.
That's it.
It's the best thing.
Look at right now. Look at the camera. Give him the one shot right there. Give him the sweat. How about that? Skinny Marcus Spears. Are you serious?
It is weird looking at myself on camera.
No, I'm serious. Like right now, we used to have a super wide lens from when you would come in here and hang out with Paul.
I was super fat.
And now, you weren't super fat.
I was super fat.
I would go so far as to not call you super fat. husky.
See, here's the problem.
We're a little husky.
Here's the problem. That was the issue. That was nobody wanted to tell you were fat. That was my issue. No, you're a big dude. Like, that was always
Dude,
you're a big guy.
I'm 185 pounds.
I know.
Hey, listen, there's no way I'm going to roll in and be like Marcus. Hey man, you that dad bod, you're taking it to a whole different level.
You need to put the fork down.
I can't do that.
That's what somebody should have told me.
What is the weight loss thing?
I'm 56 down, man.
56 pounds down. That's 2 Paul Finebaums.
That is 3 Paul Finebaums.
3 Paul Finebaums.
I got 40. I can't add 44 more pounds.
44.
My goal was 100. Here's the thing. Here's what I tell people on social media. When I started this journey, is that I don't have a time frame. I think people get caught up in that. People get caught up in, I want to be this by this, right? I just wanted to be healthier.
Yeah,
that was the bottom line.
You feel better? You feel good?
Oh man, the energy.
Yeah.
And I tell people the thing that's been great about me losing weight is the ability to sleep. Because I'm serious, man. When you big, you don't sleep well. It's hard to rest. It's hard to get comfortable. And I got to shout out my wife, Aisha Spears, because she was like, "Look, it's you've taken long enough after retirement."
It's just like, hey, just be like that. Yeah, come on, get
I need you. I need you around. We got 3 kids.
All right, I need you around because there's a story that I've been waiting to get into today, and I knew you were going to be fired up about it. So let's go ahead and show you the headlines of what this is. If you think Jalen Hurts is just giving up on Bama, you clearly don't know him. Now that headline doesn't make a whole lot of news, right? Because I think we all agree, Swagu, that Jalen Hurts is a dude. Right?
He's the real deal.
26-2. The guy can play, but his dad, Averion Hurts, said, "I told Jalen, you quote messed up," and that's the FCC compliant version. You put yourself in this situation, but it talked about the idea of Jalen Hurts and whether or not he transfers if he doesn't get an opportunity to play. I personally think I don't think it's a big story. The reason why I say that is because if I'm a dad of a player, I want my kid to have as much success and play as much as possible. And I think it's kind of a non-story. But from a player standpoint, what does this put Jalen Hurts in a position right now down in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I think you got to give a little more meat to the fact that his dad was his coach. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the bottom line is this, right? And Jalen was great. Character was great in the championship game when he got pulled. All of that stuff that transpired, he handled it with a lot of class. But class doesn't mean you don't want to play. And I think a lot of people get that confused. If you think Jalen Hurts and the way he performed for the first 2 years is going to be easy for him not to be the starting quarterback, you're out of your mind. He's a competitor. I've been around this kid. He's an uber competitor. So for him not to have that opportunity, and it's a legit battle. Everybody has these notions that it's already settled. I'm one of those guys where I would put my money on Tua being the starter.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair
because he adds an element that Jalen hadn't really shown to be strong in the area of throwing the ball downfield.
At that same point, Jalen Hurts has also had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different offensive coordinators. He's had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different quarterback coaches. But that's hard as hell to get past.
That's the point, PB. You don't think Jalen would make that argument?
That's true.
So for me, the story is. Stories are stories until something materializes. I think everybody agree with that. We've been doing media a long time to understand that is what it is. But just from a personal standpoint, these dudes are competitors, man. I wouldn't fault Jalen for transferring to go somewhere. If you know that you can start at probably 95% of the universities in the country.
Right now, Jalen Hurts was a starting quarterback. If he, quote-unquote, free agent, he'd start for 100 different schools in D1 football.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably about 13 of them here in the conference. Probably 10 of them in the conference.
So it's not really, I know Alabama fans. I've been on the show enough to know that there will be a lot of talk and the message boards will go crazy. Just keep in mind that these kids want to play.
Well, and there's a quote that says "Hungry dogs run faster."
Yeah,
and I mean you're talking about there's probably this news of quote unquote, hey, I want to play or else I'm going to transfer. It's probably not just to Jalen Hurts. It's a dad is going to say that about whether or not he's an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. Guess what? That's the reason why Alabama's been so good is because you have 5 stars clawing after 5 stars, and I think that's something that Kirby Smart's starting to build up right now. I think Jimbo Fisher's going to bring that going forward.
The competition And the environment that's created around Alabama is why they're so successful. Because you always are either a play or a game away from somebody else getting a shot and rushing for 1,000 yards that season or throwing for 2,000 yards. That is the climate of that university. That's why the success has been sustained and it's been there. So for me, it's a big story because of what Jalen has done. But we've seen Alabama quarterbacks transfer.
Sure.
One just transferred from Georgia because he got beat out by a freshman.
Right.
So it's not a figment of the imagination that Jalen Hurts may look at this situation and say, I can go start somewhere and make a team better.
By the way, I don't think there's a chance that any of that happens coming up this offseason. Whether or not, let's say that, and that's one of the reasons why, to his credit, I think it truly is a quarterback race all the way up until week 1 because Tua's going to be behind the curve when it comes to actual taking snaps here in spring.
That's the thing, PB. Jalen was in the same situation.
Right.
Until he came in against Florida State. So Saban is going to give you the opportunity to win the job. And it doesn't matter what job it is. Now, you have some places where quarterbacks are supplanted, and ideally, that's what you want as a head coach is to know who your guy is. But he seemed to do pretty well not knowing who his quarterback was going to be.
You know what? I want Nick Saban? I want Nick Saban to go ahead and look at the camera and go ahead, give me the fancy one shot for those and go, it ain't going to matter, all right?
It ain't going to matter.
Who you want me to play? Huh? You want me to play Daniel Brams? You want me to play? By the way, you're no longer Big Swagu. You're medium Swagu on the show. You're medium Swagu. You can no longer be the Big Swagu. You looking all skinny and European over there? What is going on? Are you going to wear Jordan Rodgers stuff now?
No.
Because I see Boog getting all fancy and stuff, wearing these tight shirts.
This is to all of the SEC network, SEC fans that see me. I will not change because I'm smaller. All right? I'm a big dude at heart and at mind. I just had to make a better decision about my health.
All right. So now you're going to be able to fit into better gear. So that's going to be
it's going to cost
I'm looking
me.
forward. It's going to cost you. Hey, you're actually working, believe it or not, this weekend. You were actually on the schedule. I was shocked when I saw you because you're actually going to be you're going to be on the sidelines for the LSU game.
I'm super excited about this because like we were talking this morning, one of the first things that I enjoyed about media when I started paying attention was when Tony Siragusa was doing sideline. Goose. Because it was fun. It was a player. It was relatable. Lugs does a phenomenal job on that crew that Mac does. Cole Kublik does a great job on our main crew on SEC Network. I enjoy that facet of the game. I think a lot of people learn a lot about the game with a guy being on the sideline, being able to tell you real time what's happening. I just spent 2 days down in Baton Rouge talking to those guys. What do you want to ask me about your former team? Like what are you most looking forward to finding out about LSU football in 2018? Is O letting loose? Personally,
not yet. Right. But I will tell you this. Medium. I almost called you Big Swagu. It's medium. Petite Swagu. That's what I want to call you, my man. He's more comfortable now that with Steve Ensminger as the offensive coordinator. I don't think Steve Ensminger on paper is as good of an offensive coordinator as Matt Canada. I don't think that can be denied. I think that it's all about fit. Sometimes Kyler Murray wasn't a good fit, a 5-star fit over at Texas A&M, right? That just was not the fit, but they went after him, right? Because he's a 5-star guy. Matt Canada is the Kyler Murray of offensive coordinators for LSU. Yeah. He looks like a great fit, but he wasn't. I think with Steve Ensminger, you got more of a 3-star offensive coordinator, but that made Ed Ogeron a little bit more comfortable because you and I talked about it. That's an issue with Coach O right now.
I'm going to tell you something about Ems that I think a lot of people, we become calibrated to like sexy hires in college football. Like we want the name, we want the background, all of that. And that matters because usually you get the name because of success. Here's what Ems is going to do though. He's going to find what's best for the guys on the field. And I think sometimes it's a very overrated.
What in the hell does that mean? That is such a football.
I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
It's a very overrated thing when you have a coach with a philosophy, right? Because if you have 11 guys on offense that can't run the philosophy, you're not going to have success. That may very well work somewhere else, and you're known as one of your Broads Award finalists as the best assistant in the country. But you have to tailor the game and how you call plays to the players that you have.
For instance, if I go to your house and I try to make jambalaya, you got to make sure you got the right ingredients.
You got to make sure.
Are you still allowed to eat jambalaya?
Not much.
God, you're going down to Baton Rouge and you're not going to be able to eat crawfish, some etouffee, some boudin.
I'm not dead.
Unbelievable. Beignets.
I have my moments where I feel like, okay, I put a lot of work in, I can have a meal. See, the problem
you're basically dead if you go to Baton Rouge and you can't eat good fried seafood.
Right, but the problem is I wouldn't have a meal, I would have a day. And then it would turn into a day and a half, and then weekend. 2 days, and then it'll be a cheat week. Yeah. Now I've been able to scale back. I've been able to fix my mind around. I can have a meal and then go back. My whole idea was to go 90%, 10%. 90% of the meals that I eat are good, effective, healthy for my body. The 10% is when I just want to wild out. Like my cousin's getting married in Cancun in a couple of weeks. I'm going to eat in Cancun. That's a celebration. Like, I'm going to eat. But I will be on the beach working out, too.
And you know what? You look a whole lot better with your shirt off now than you did in a couple weeks ago.
What?
He is Marcus Spears.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
A man that has changed locations from Starkville out to Gainesville. Listen, all you had to do was you just put 5 new letters in the front of your name and where you live at, Dan Mullen. Coach, when you look at these changes on the rules, let's start with that. The new kickoff rule, what did you think when that came down not too long ago?
I don't know. They're trying. I think one of the things that, having been on several committees working with the NCAA in the past, everyone tries different ideas. And, one of the thoughts is the kickoff is a dangerous play. How do you potentially limit the dangers within the kickoff play without taking away the excitement? And also the strategy of the game. You could sit there and say, okay, the receiving team could just have the option, instead of kicking off, just to take the ball on the 25 as a touchback. Take away surprise onside kicks. You take away the opportunity to do some of those other things. So, there's a lot that goes into it, and I think they're just trying some way to create a rule to help safety within the game.
Dan, is there a sense of nervousness with trying to teeter that fine line, not taking away what the game of football really is, and trying to make it safer with players? How much of that? How much thought goes into that from you as a head coach?
Well, I think there's a bunch, but I think all the committees. I think a lot of people, when it comes to that way, when you look at the rules committee, is trying to keep player safety in mind. They don't do that with all the things. Look at training camp, what they've done with training camp, and that I don't know that they've created. I think they've actually created a more dangerous situation with the training camp rules they've just implemented. But I do think when it comes down to the rules of the actual game on the field in the game, everyone tries as best they can to create safety for everybody within the game itself, and to without changing what the game's all about. But you know what? The game changes throughout the year. So yeah. I think that's a big deal.
Dan Mullen, head coach of Florida Gators, joining us on the Paul Finebaum Show. Coach, how many times have you gotten lost in Gainesville so far? You know where you're
I haven't lived here before. I got a little bit of a head start. So you know what? But what got me is my depth direction. So I'd be sitting here when I got back. I'm like, oh, that's going to be on the next left. But it's actually like 4 or 5 blocks still ahead of me. I'm like, well, I thought that was a lot closer before. Or I thought something was a lot further away before, and I go blowing by where I'm supposed to go. But generally, I've kept myself in the right direction.
Do you have a new jogging route? Because I don't know if you're seeing you can't see us, but Marcus Spears has lost 56 pounds, so he's on that Dan Mullen kind of runner's diet. So
love it.
Do you have
it? But you know what? I'm working my paths around. I got to find, and it's because it's distance-based. You got to get your distance and your time down. But I am a creature of habit. I actually did a new one this morning, so I took a right instead of a left, and that's a major deal for me. You know what I mean? You guys, a creature of habit, you start running this path, and it actually extended the run a little bit. Now the spring ball's over, and I'm trying to find my direct path, and I ended up going about closer to 5.5 miles instead of what I've been doing at about 4 3/4. So that might be a new path for me.
Coach, do you have a security detail that runs with you?
Like the president?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not as big time as Marcus. I'm not as big time as you are. I'm just me, and so I run on. Hey, the great thing I have going for me, I'm still undefeated at the University of Florida.
That's true.
I've never lost a game here. So as the head coach. So, everybody still loves me right now. So I don't think I need that security just yet.
Coach, did you get a house?
Give me some time, though. I'm sure I might need some.
Did you get a house by the water so I can come catch some peacock bass and fish? Are you by the water anywhere?
Listen, man, we're down here in Gainesville, Florida. I mean, I love looking at the water, running by the water. But there's a lot of stuff in that water that I don't always love. And I don't need it crawling up into my backyard either. So, yeah, there's great water by my house. When we get a house, we're going to build a house here. There's great water in the backyard. It's called a swimming pool.
I was going to say, where Dan Mullen's
nice
building?
And fenced in and protected from all of that weird stuff on the outside.
I was going to say, where Dan Mullen's going to build his house? Wherever Megan Mullen wants that house built. Because we always know who's the boss in that family, right?
I will say this. We did rent a place that we're living in temporarily, and the one night she's like, all right, you coming home? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, because I don't know where we live. So you can text me the address, and I'll put it in my GPS, and I'll try to figure out where to go home to.
Put your mama on the phone. Put your mama on the phone. How do I get – is it a left or is it a right? Dan Mullen, head coach of the Florida Gators, joining us. What was that like, being back down in the swamp, seeing that field, seeing 50,000-plus cheer on a team that you beloved, and now you get an opportunity and the honor to coach here in the SEC?
You know what? It was unbelievable. I had such great memories here, having won 2 national championships in the 4 years that we were here before. Great people, great friends, great memories. And to come back, and be out there and see the excitement, to see the fan base. And to be honest with you, I got asked, I've done a lot of different speaking tours, and everyone's like, what game are you most looking forward to? And I know it's going to sound weird, but I told him, and honestly, is the Charleston Southern, that first game. The opportunity where you're going to run out of the tunnel, and you're running out of the tunnel as the head coach of the Florida Gators is going to be an unbelievable lifelong memory for me.
Coach, you make the change from Mississippi State. How long does it take? I don't know if people value this enough, but you step foot in Gainesville, you take over as head coach. How important and how quickly do you try to get that trust factor built with your players?
Well, I think it's huge. It's the most important thing that you have. In the first team meeting, the first thing I said to him was, hey, I want you to know something. I chose you. You didn't choose me. I didn't. Obviously, some of the guys that had just signed and some of our, but it was even before recruiting, the very first team meeting. I walked into the room and nobody signed. Nobody at the school had signed to play for me. They signed to play for the University of Florida, but not for me in my program. And I said, but I'll share this with you. I said, one, I will earn your trust and respect, but I can also guarantee you that you will earn my trust and respect as well before you ever step foot on that field. And and from that day forward, I've seen really no resistance, and that's been the biggest surprise not surprise, but probably the best thing that going for me is that there hasn't been. I mean, guys, we have a lot of work to do. Whether it's in our in every aspect of the program. Our football knowledge, our football skill set, learning the offense, learning the defensive scheme, our conditioning, our strength, our discipline structure, our accountability, everything. There's a lot of growing that still needs to occur. And especially to me, the biggest one is how hard we play. If you watch my teams play, we're going to play hard. I want to be physical, and we're going to play hard. We might not be the biggest, fastest, anything, but we will play hard and we will play physical for 60 minutes. And that adjustment, those guys, there hasn't been resistance. There's a long way to go in learning how to play up to the standard that I expect our team to play with. But our guys have tried as hard as they can to believe in the program and do what's asked of them. And when you don't have that resistance, you have the opportunity to succeed much faster.
Dan Mullen, head coach of the Florida Gators, joining us. Coach, this is the one that I really wanted to ask, and I've been waiting to get enough courage to ask you about it. But you decided to team up with Judd Davis, a former place kicker, for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl Challenge. The big golf tournament, it's a huge one. Did you have tryouts for this? Because you can't go out there and embarrass yourself against Kirby, against all the Nick Saban, who's got Mark Ingram. There's some players in this tournament.
Okay, it is a big deal.
He said okay.
And I've had guys come up and say, I'm not sure. One, obviously I checked with the HBC first to go upstairs, but he's playing on another team in it. He's on a Legends team. And I think he's playing with Coach Stoops. So, Coach Spurrier is going to play in his Legends group. So I wanted to make sure that was set. And, I did some scouting with him. I did some asking around. People spoke highly of Judd. I've talked to Judd. Judd's trying to get me out for some practice rounds. I don't know, to try to either impress me or to, maybe kind of quiet my expectations. And I've told him, I said, we've got spring going, I have this. You just got to be ready to go perform because it is a big event. We expect to win. I'm not sure. I haven't seen all the entries, but I know if he's there, Fred McCrary is going to be talking trash to me because he's been my partner for many years. But I did tell Judd. I said there's a lot to live up to and a lot of expectation. I'd hate, to have to fire you mid-round or go to a bullpen mid-round and get somebody to fly in to fill in for the second half or something of that nature.
Listen, I was there last year. I've hosted it before. Kirby Smart takes this thing seriously. Like, I'm being serious. Like, he is going to be grinding and coming after you. Forget the football game. This is the first big battle that we're going to see at that Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl Challenge. And I don't want you to just kind of just show up and assume that it's going to get done. If not, if you're bad at the turn, we're going to need Little Mullen to step in and do the work.
Yeah, Cannon could come in and pick it up for us a little bit. But I will say this, if you're going to go, you got to go with, you go with a specialist. I mean, those guys, that's all they do is play golf, right? The punters and the kickers. Why everybody else, right? Marks will tell you this, why everybody else is practicing, right? When you play in the NFL, those guys are working the chip. They're working the short game over there, right? And they're getting it right. So I think it's a way to go. I tried. There were several PGA players that were. I was going to try to reach out, get. Billy Horschel, I think, was set to come in. When you look at how to do it, of can I go the PGA route and let's see who we can get on board to come play for us, and they rejected all the golfers. So the PGA, there's no PGA players allowed. So I went with the specialist.
That's a good thing, Coach. Coach, I got to ask you this. This is my last one. I know the work it's been a tremendous amount of work, and you've done a lot of things leading up and trying to get your guys prepared for the season. But how much fun are you having being back in Gainesville?
I'm having a great time. One of the fun things is the excitement of coming in and installing the program again. That excitement, that great challenge ahead of us to rebuild the Gator standard to what it is, which was, when I left, we'd won 2 out of 3 national championships, and they were hoping to compete for a 4th. I think the next year they finished 13-1, and there was a standard of play here, and it's exciting to get that back. And and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, I did, yeah. You were visiting all the sorority houses trying to get them to head on out to the game. So, listen, you're doing the Lord's work,
if you do that,
Coach Mullen.
I went to some fraternities, too.
That's true.
But generally speaking, if all the sororities show up...
Then the fraternities follow, right.
I don't know. That's just a theory I have.
I think it's a smart one. He's the head coach of the Florida Gators, Dan Mullen. Tell Cannon my swing is all messed up, so I'm going to have him FaceTime me and look at my swing.
That's what happens when you become a dad. You don't have enough time out there on the golf course, right?
At least Megan, I got the good little pajamas for both, so we're in good shape. Hey, Coach, good luck in that tournament. Good luck in the season. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
He is Josh Kendall of the State, and this headline came from the State. Mel Kiper thinks Hayden Hurst is going high in the NFL draft. Of course, that's going to be a major player that Jake Bentley was able to throw to last year. We'll see and talk to Josh Kendall now about what direction they go in 2018. Josh, how big of a blow is that when you lose a guy like Hayden Hurst to an offense that was really trying to find its motor in 2017?
Yeah, absolutely. If you lose a first-round draft pick, it's a big deal, and especially, like you say, because South Carolina can't afford to take a single step backward offensively. Mm-hmm. So the problem is, as it often is when you're trying to replace a guy of that talent, they've got one guy who has proven he can block like Hurst, and they got another guy who has proven that he might be able to be the pass-catching threat that Hayden was. They don't have anybody who's proven they can do both from one roster position. So they've got to find that guy or they've just got to throw every pass to Deebo Samuel. We'll see how that goes.
I was going to say, last year, every time Deebo Samuel actually touched the ball, it worked out pretty well for him. I mean, he was kind of like a dark horse Heisman Trophy guy until, of course, he suffered the injury. You expect him to be 100% by the time that the Gamecocks take the field against, Coastal Carolina in their opener?
I do. I think he was 100% by the time spring practice ended. But you couldn't tell. Will Muschamp had him wrapped in a giant bubble, and ran around behind him, fussing at anybody who came within 10 yards of him, because I think he understands how critical having that guy on the field this fall is. His offense, the narrative on Will Muschamp, and it's well earned, is that his teams do everything really well except offense, which they do really poorly, and they've done it fairly poorly his first 2 years at South Carolina. They've got to get that turned around. If they're going to, number one needs to be on the field.
Last time we saw that, and one of the reasons why people will say, hey, it wasn't the right fit, was with Kurt Roper. He was the offensive coordinator. Now there's a change. How much is the philosophy of Gamecock football going to switch up this season?
Well, philosophically, I think they're finally going to go fast. You can rewind the tape, go back 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is now, and listen to Will Muschamp when he was hired, and he stood at the podium. He said, we want to go fast offensively. Well, in the 2 years since then, they've gone just about as slow as anybody else. Now, the reasons for that are just about as slow as anybody in the country, I should say. The reasons for that are varied, but I think that they have finally committed to and that is against Will's DNA. He is ground and pound. Your offense has to protect your defense, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, necessity is the mother of invention. Desperation is the mother of a fast-paced offense for Will Muschamp. He knows, I think, he has no choice. He told Brian McClendon, you got to go fast, you got to go fast, you got to go fast, and they'll go fast. Now, fast looks great when it's working. Fast looks really bad when you're putting 3 and outs together.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, everybody wants to go fast, and all of a sudden the defense is like, what, we're up again? And do you feel on the other side, though, do you feel like Muschamp has his, quote, dudes on defense? Because we've known him to be Coach Boom. He's known him to be unbelievable defenses. Josh Kendall, does he have his guys that are ready to play SEC football on the defensive side?
According to him, he doesn't have them at safety. He said this spring he only had one safety he felt like was ready to play championship football, that being Stephen Montag, a guy who they frankly got off of the recruiting extras pile long after he got here. I mean, he was kind of a leftover guy, but he's become a really good player for them. So they're not happy with what they've got at safety. Part of that is Will Muschamp is the safeties coach, so he's always going to harp on that guy. But they need starters there, and they need depth there. They got a couple of dudes. They got T.J. Brunson as a middle linebacker. Everybody will know who he is by the end of the year. Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle. Everybody will know who he is if they don't already. And they got a very good defensive end in D.J. Wanham. So those are the Muschamp type dudes that you're talking about. And I think everybody believes that with Muschamp and Travaris Robinson, the defense will be fine.
Well, and I think the last couple of years he didn't have those guys, but he was sharp enough as a defensive mind to go ahead and kind of camouflage his inefficiencies and the deficiencies that they had and made them good. Last thing for you here, Jake Bentley. I want to say it was an average year for Jake as far as the expectations that I had for him, and of course that happens when you lose Deebo Samuel. What is the one thing that makes you think he could take that next step going forward?
Well, I think Deebo Samuel is part of it. I think another year of maturation is part of it. I think that Dan Werner will probably help him some. And I thought he had a pretty good year last year. I think expectations was the key word. He had a pretty good year as a true freshman, so everybody thought he's going to take a giant step and going to have a great year. And he didn't. He missed some throws high. The running game went nowhere. There were a lot of factors in that. I think that he is a professional quarterback in the future, in some form or fashion. I think that he understands the position extremely well. I think going fast will help him because his intelligence will help him because he knows the offense in and out. He studies the game. He's one of these diligent sort of gym rat guys. So going fast suits him well because he can take more advantage of that intelligence and knowledge of the offense. And I'm not saying he's going to have a 3,500-yard year, but I think he's going to be, a top third of the SEC quarterback and potentially could be a guy that you're scratching your chin at the end of the year and saying, is he my first team All-SEC guy? I think that's possible.
And if that's the case, going up against week 2 of the season, a super fast team going up against the Georgia Bulldogs at home that aren't going to have Lorenzo Carter and Roquan Smith, whoo, boy, that's going to be a good one. Make sure you follow him, Josh, at the State. He's Josh Kendall. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you soon, bud.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network, beginning at 3 Eastern.